Hi and welcome to another episode of Topic Busters from onmaths. Today we're looking at right angle triangles. They're not wrong, they're right. Enjoy! Hi, so today we are looking at right angle triangles. Now as soon as you think about right angle triangles, the first two things that go into your head should be, is it Pythagoras? Is it trigonometry? Now there are other questions. It could ask you to find the area of a triangle quite early on. It could ask you to find one angle given another angle quite early on. But if you're midway through, just over halfway, probably Pythagoras. Towards the end of the paper, probably trigonometry. Now, do not quote me on that. A Pythagoras question could be the very last question, but it needs to go through your mind. You need to be thinking, oh, right angle triangle, that's odd. Or if the question creates a right angle triangle, which we are going to be looking at later, then you've got to be thinking, is that trigonometry? Is it Pythagoras? And the general rule is if you have three lengths with one of them being unknown, then it's Pythagoras. If you have two lengths and an angle, I'm going to do this as an angle, no, that as an angle, I don't know, with one of them being unknown, then it's trigonometry. Okay, so when you have a look through this video, it should become obvious the difference between a Pythagoras question and a trigonometry question. However many times I say this, students every single year will do Pythagoras for a trig question and trig for a Pythagoras question. It's just a matter of practice. So let's get started. Okay, so we're just going to do some warm-up stuff. So root 70, I can type it into the calculator. So that's going to be 8.4 when I type that in. So press the square root button and then 70. Now I'm going to round it to one decimal place. Okay, this time I've got to do 5 squared take away 3 squared. Now 5 squared is 25, 3 squared is 9, so it's 25 take away 9. So it would be 25 take away 9, which is 16. And then sine 33. So I'm going to click the sine button, then type in 33. Now I always try and remember to close the brackets, because when you type in sine, the calculator will open brackets, and so afterwards I just close them. And that's important sometimes, not necessary for this question. And it's 0.54. I'm going to put that to 2 decimal places. Okay, if you want to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so root 90 is 9.5, and that's to 1 decimal place. 8 squared is 64. Take away 6 squared, well that's 36, so that's going to be 28. And then tan 105, so I click the tan button, don't forget it opens a bracket, type in 105, close the bracket, press equals, and that's going to be minus 3.73 to 2 decimal places. And if it doesn't suggest in the exam what to round it to, always pick 2 decimal places or 3 significant figures. Okay, so we're going to move on to Pythagoras. We've got right angled triangle, and we've got two of the sides, 2 centimeters and 6 centimeters, and we're asked to find the other side. So the first thing I notice is that the thing we're asked to find is the hypotenuse, and the reason I know that is it's opposite the right angle. So the very first thing I'm thinking about is, okay, with Pythagoras I'm going to have to square both the sides, so I always square the bigger number first, and so I know I need to square both of them. Now if I'm finding the hypotenuse, to make sure it's the biggest side, I put a plus. If I'm given the hypotenuse, I'll put a minus. It's that simple. And the last step is to square root your answer. So we're going to do 6 squared, which is 36, plus 2 squared, which is 4, and that's going to be square root of 40. And the square root, so we'll do x equals, I suppose. So x equals square root of 40. Now if I type that into the calculator, it's going to give me an answer of 6.3, and I'll go put the units, which is centimeters, and what I've rounded to 1 decimal place. Okay, for the next one, let's have a look. So where's the hypotenuse? Opposite the right angle, so up here. Okay, so again, I'm always going to put the bigger number first, so 11 squared. So step 1, square them both. 5 squared. Now this time I'm given the hypotenuse, so if I was to add those together and then square root it, it will give me a bigger side. Well, I know that x isn't going to be a bigger side, so I know that I'm going to have to subtract. And then the last step is square root it. So that's going to be 121 minus 25, and 121 take away 25 is 96. And so type that into my calculator. Square root of 96 is going to be 9.8 centimeters. Again, rounded to 1 decimal place. Okay, so the last question looks really complicated, but actually, as long as I draw one line, it's dead easy. If I draw a line down here, this actually is an isosceles triangle, because both of these are 8. Therefore, I know that this bit here is going to be 5 centimeters, and that line will create a right angle triangle just here. So from that right angle triangle, I know that that's the hypotenuse, and I'm just basically going to ignore the whole of this side for now. So I'm going to do the Pythagoras. So x equals 8 squared, so I'm going to square them both. Now I know that I'm going to be taking away because I'm given the hypotenuse, and then square root it. So it's going to be 64 minus 25. Then when I do that, I get 39. And so x, which I'm calling this x, I should probably say that. And I haven't labelled it on the diagram, which I should. So square root of 39. Now, I'm going to do something weird here. I'm not actually going to round my answer. I'm going to keep it in the calculator. So I show the examiner I've done that by putting 3 little dots to say, look, I haven't finished. I'm just going to keep that in my calculator. Okay, the reason I want to keep that into my calculator is it asks me to find the area. And area equals half times the base times the height, with the base and height hitting each other at right angles. So x is my height and 10 is my base. So it's going to be half times the base, which is 10, times that 6.244, blah blah. Now, because I've kept that in my calculator, I'll get an exact answer here, and you should never round until you get to an answer. Now, if you absolutely have to round, make sure you write down so many digits that it doesn't matter that you've rounded. So maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 decimal places. So when I type that into my calculator, I get 31.2 centimeters, and because it's an area, it's centimeters squared, I've rounded that to 1 decimal place. Okay, pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so the first thing to do with this question is just find out where the hypotenuse is. It's opposite the right angle. So, working out, I'm going to say x equals, and I always put the biggest first, so 5 squared and 3 squared. Now, because I'm finding the hypotenuse, it's going to be a plus, and the last step is make sure it's a square root. Now, if you've done a squared plus b squared equals c squared and done it that way, that's absolutely fine. So that's going to be 25 plus 9. So 25 plus 9 is 34. Let's just start on a new line. So root 34 on the calculator gives me 5.8 centimeters, and I'm just going to say I've done it to 1 decimal place. Okay, next one. So we're going to find out where the right angle is, which is here, and go opposite it, and that's the hypotenuse. So same again, x equals, and we're going to do 12 squared because it's the biggest, and 5 squared. This time we've given the hypotenuse, so we're going to take away and then square root. So it's square root 144, take away 25. And so 144 take away 25 is going to be 119. So square root 119. And therefore x equals, well, I type it into the calculator and I get 10.9 centimetres to 1 decimal place. Okay, same thing with the last one as we did before. We're going to put a line down the middle here. Now it might make sense I call this h, but I'm just going to call this x for now. Okay, so first thing I've got to do is find out what x is. So x equals. Now let's just have a look and see what we've got. So we've got a right angle here. Go opposite the right angle, we've got a hypotenuse here, and we're ignoring this side of it, but we need to split this so it's 4 centimeters here because it's half of that 8 because it's an isosceles triangle. Okay, so we're going to have 9, so square root 9 squared, we've got the 4 squared, and we're given the hypotenuse, so we're going to be taking away. So it's going to be 81 take away 16. Okay, when you do that in the calculator, you get 65. So x, which is the triangle's height, is square root of 65, which is, let's just do it now, 8.0622 blah blah blah. Okay, and then I'm going to find the area. So area of a triangle, area equals half times the base times the height. So it's half times the base, which is 8. So it's the full base of the triangle, times that 8.0622 blah blah blah. So the area is going to be, if I do it in the calculator, 32.2 centimeters squared rounded to 1 decimal place. Okay, so we've done Pythagoras up until now, but this one is not Pythagoras anymore. This is trigonometry because we're given an angle in the right angle triangle. With Pythagoras, we're given 2 lengths and we're finding the third length. With this, we're given either an angle or a length, and we're given a different length and the angle. Basically, there's 2 lengths and an angle involved in this one, with one of them being unknown. Okay, so the first step with trigonometry is to label the sides. Now, it's the same first step as before. So you go opposite the right angle, and that's the hypotenuse. The opposite is opposite the angle given in the question, which is the 32 there. So you go opposite that, and that's the opposite. And I'm labeling it with over opposite. The adjacent is between the right angle and the angle given to you in the question. So I'm going to label that with an A for adjacent. The next step is cross off the one that doesn't have a number or a letter next to it. So the H has the 17 centimeters, the A has the X, which is what we're trying to find, the O doesn't have anything next to it, so I cross that out. Now, I'm going to write this up at the top, because this is the next step, is you write down so, ka, toa. I'm writing them carefully because they make 3 triangles there, so I'm going to just put the triangles in. Now you will not be given that in the question or the paper, so you have to remember that. So some people, as soon as they go into the exam, they write that down, the so katoa, in their exam paper. So we've got to figure out which one we're using. So so has O and H, toa has has O and A, and the ka in the middle has the A and the H. Now, because we're interested in the A and the H in this question, because we crossed out the O, we're going to be going for ka. So I'm going to be drawing a triangle, so a bigger one this time. Now, the C in ka stands for cos, and you only ever cos an angle, you never cos a length. So the angle given to us in the question is 32, so it's going to be cos 32. The A goes at the top, so the X goes at the top, and the H goes at the bottom. Now, if you use triangles for speed, distance, time, basically, when you're trying to find the top one, you just times the 2 at the bottom. If you try and find one at the bottom, you divide the one at the top by the one at the bottom. Okay, so with this question we're doing cos 32 times 17. Now be careful with this. When you type in cos 32, the calculator will open a set of brackets. So when you type in cos in the calculator, it will open a set of brackets. You type in 32 and you have to shut that bracket, then type in times 17. Okay, when we do that, we get the answer of 14.42 centimeters. I'm going to round to 2 decimal places for all of these. Okay, so the next one we're going to start off by labelling the sides. So the H goes here, O is opposite the angle, and the A is between the angle and the right angle. I'll cross off the H because there's nothing next to it. The O is the 5 centimeters and the A is the 7 centimeters. Now I'm going to look at the SOHCAHTOA. The TOA has the O and the A, so I'm going to be doing the TOA. Now we always, so the T stands for tan, and we always tan, cos or sine an angle. Now this time the angle is X. So I'm going to carry on. Right, so we've got OA, which O means 5, so it's 5 at the top, and A is at the bottom, which is 7. Okay, now when you're trying to find the angle, it will show you that tan X equals 5 over 7. So if we know that tan X is 5 over 7, to find out what X is, which is the angle we're asked for, we've got to inverse tan, which looks like that, 5 over 7. Okay, now to get inverse tan, you click the shift button, which on the Casio calculator is the top left, and then click tan, and that will inverse tan. But be careful, make sure you close the bracket because it will not like it if you don't. Okay, so I type that in and I get 35.54. This time it's degrees because it's an angle, and we've rounded to 2 decimal places. Okay, last one. So this time I'm going to label the angles, label the sides again. So opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, or opposite the marked angle is the opposite, and the one between the angle and the right angle is the adjacent. So I'm going to be crossing out, which one am I going to be crossing out? The A, nothing next to it. So we're at O and H, which is going to be sine. So using that triangle, so it's sine the angle's 43, equals, what we've got, so it's the opposite, which is 10, and the hypotenuse is X. So this time X equals 10 over sine 43 from the triangle. So I type in 10 divided by sine 43, or put it as a fraction, 10 over sine 43. When I do that, I get the answer of 14.66, and we're doing a length, centimeters, 2 decimal places. And that's it. Okay, if you want to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so first step, we've got to label the sides. So hypotenuse goes opposite the right angle, opposite goes opposite the marked angle, A goes between the right angle and the marked angle. Cross off the one we don't want, and let's just write this once. So we're going to go for SOHCAHTOA. So we've got our triangles there. Probably done them a bit close together. Okay, so for the first one we're using O and A, so it's going to be tan. Okay, so it's going to be tan the angle, tan 36, and it's O, so it's X over A is 5, so we'll be timesing them together. So X equals, and we're going to be doing tan 36, close the bracket, times 5, which which is 3.63 centimetres, again to 2 decimal places. Okay, now let's move on to the next one. Go opposite the right angle is the H. O is opposite the marked angle, and A is between the marked angle and the right angle. Cross off the one we don't want, which is the A. Don't need that. Okay, so we've got O and H, which is sine. So I'm going to draw the triangle. So it's sine x, and that equals, what is it, opposite, which is 7. No, it's not, it's 3. Get it right. Over 7, which is the hypotenuse. So sine x is 3 over 7. So therefore x is going to be the inverse sine. Which you've got to click shift and then sine for 3 over 7. And close the bracket on the calculator. So the inverse sine of 3 over 7 is 25.38 degrees. That's to 2 decimal places. Okay, so the last one, let's label it up. So opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse. Opposite the marked angle, which is the 22 degrees, is the opposite. And between the right angle and the marked angle is the adjacent. One we don't want is the opposite, don't need that. So looking at that, it's A and H, which is going to be a cos. It's going to be the K. So it's cos 22. And what is it? A over H, so it's going to be 8 over X. So X equals 8 over cos 22. So let's type that into the calculator. 8 divided by cos 22, or you can put it as a fraction. And when I do that, I get 8.63 centimetres to 2 decimal places. Now, if you didn't get any of these answers right, check that your calculator is set to degrees mode. There is these things called radians that throw all of these off. If you got all of these wrong, just show a teacher or someone who does maths A-level your calculator and they'll be able to convert it to degrees. Okay, so let's talk about some obscure questions you might face. So it says find the diagonal length for a 5 centimetre square. It doesn't feel like it gives us enough information. But if we just draw a square, a really badly drawn square, and if I say 5 centimetres, now it's a square, so this is also going to be 5 centimetres here. If I draw a line going across, that's what we call the diagonal. Now, all we have here is a right angle triangle, and we're trying to find out what this is. That's supposed to be a right angle triangle, little square there. So, we do the same as we do always for finding a length in a right angle triangle, where we're given 2 lengths. So, we're going to square root. Now let's just make sure we know what we're doing. So we're trying to find the hypotenuse, which is that one. So we're going to do 5 squared plus 5 squared, and then we'll go square root it. So that is the square root of 25 plus 25, which is 50. And the square root of 50 on the calculator is 7.07 centimetres to 2 decimal places. Now, this next question is really tricky. First of all, we need to realise that those are 2 right angles there. Now, we are given the triangle on the left to find the x on the right. So we're going to do that by using Pythagoras, first of all. And we want to get, I don't know, let's call this h, because it's the height. We want to find out h, and then we can find out x. So we're using Pythagoras on the left, and then it's going to be trigonometry on the right. So we'll find out h first. So to find out h, got the wrong colour. So to find out h, we want to do the square root of, well, the hypotenuse is 7, so 7 squared. And because we're given the hypotenuse, we're going to take away 2 squared. So that's going to be the square root of 47, which is 47. It's going to be 49, take away 4, which is going to be 45. Okay, So when I do that on my calculator, I'm going to type in square root of 45 and I get 6.708 blah blah blah. Now here's the problem. I don't want to round that because I'm going to be using that in my calculation on the next thing, and to do the next thing I need to do the SOHCAHTOA. So SOHCAHTOA. Now I need to make sure I label it. So opposite the right angle, I've got red. Opposite the right angle is going to be the hypotenuse. Opposite the marked angle, which is where we've put the h, is going to be the opposite. And between the angle and the right angle is the adjacent. Now we don't need the adjacent, so it's not marked. We've got O and H, which means we're going to be using sine. So let's get my triangle done for sine. So it's going to be sine x equals opposite, which is h, but we've given that, so that's 6.708 blah 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 over, and that's going to be over h, which is 10. Now this is really tricky now because I'm going to keep that in my calculator. So I'm going to do x equals, and it's going to be the inverse sine of 6.708 blah 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 over 10. Now I've still got that in my calculator. If you've lost it from your calculator, just type in square root of 45 and press equals. Now I'm going to do divide by 10 or over 10, and I'm getting an answer of 0.67 blah blah blah. And then I'm going to do shift and sign, and then I'm going to press the answer button, which on the Casios is in the bottom row. It's ANS for answer. Close bracket, and then press equals, and it gives me 42.13, and we're finding an angle, so degrees to 2 decimal places. Now if you get confused with that, as I said before, you can write down the number, but just write it down to 10 decimal places and feed that into your calculator. If you want to, so let's try it now. So inverse sine, and then you could put 6.708 and then the next maybe 5 extra decimal places, 6 extra decimal places, to make sure you keep the accuracy over 10. Okay, last question. Always with these questions, it always pays to draw another diagram. So with this question, I'm going to be having to draw another diagram, and the angle between the person and the tree is a right angle. So I'm going to be drawing this diagram badly as a right angle triangle. We've got 6 meters here and 5 meters here, and the person's down here, and the cat, the poorly drawn cat, is up here. Okay, now it says find angle of elevation of the cat from the person. Now angle of elevation is basically you look horizontal, always horizontal, and it's how far up you have to go. So the person here is looking horizontal and they're going that much up. Now the other thing is angle of depression, which is the same as elevation, but instead of going up you go down. So this person's down here and they're looking up X to see the cat. So you imagine they're looking, across from the floor and they're looking up. Okay, so to find X we need to use the triangles before. So let's label the sides. So opposite the right angle is the hypotenuse, opposite the marked angle is the opposite, and between the angle and the right angle is the adjacent. We don't need H, so it's going to be a tan. Okay, so it's going to be tan x equals, and it's the opposite, which is 5, over the adjacent, which is 6. So it's going to be x equals inverse tan of 5 over 6, which is going to equal 39.81 degrees to 2 decimal places. Okay, if you want to pause the video now and have a go. Okay, so we're going to start off drawing the square and the diagonal. We'll label that X, and it's a 6 centimeter by 6 centimeter square. Okay, so to find out what X is, well, that's a right angle there. So the right angle is going to be hypotenuse there. So it's going to be the square root of 6 squared plus 6 squared, which is the square root of 72, which is going to equal 8.49 centimeters, and that's rounded to 2 decimal places. Okay, so for this next one, we're going to go, well, first of all, we're going to be looking at Pythagoras for this side. We're going to label it H here. Okay, so to find out what H is, we're going to square root, and we're going to do 5 squared, which is the hypotenuse, so we're going to be doing take away 2 squared, which is going to be the square root of 21, which equals 4.5825, blah 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 blah. Okay, now we're going to be using trigonometry, so let's write down SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. Okay, so let's label the sides on the right hand side. So opposite the right angle is going to be hypotenuse there. Opposite the marked angle, which is that H, is going to be there, and A is going to be down here. Now we don't need the A, that's of no interest to us at all. So looking at that, we've got O and H, which is going to be a sine. So it's going to be sine X equals, and then we've got O over H. So O is that 4.5825 blah 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 over, and it's going to be 8. So it's going to be inverse sine, or I should probably write X equals, show the examiner what I'm trying to find. So X equals inverse sine of 4.5825 blah 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 over 8. And I've still got it in my calculator. If you haven't, just type in root 21. I'm going to divide that by 8. Ooh, root 21 divided by 8. And then I'm going to press shift sign answer. And that gives me 34.95 degrees to 2 decimal places. Okay, so last question. We need to draw a triangle to represent the situation. It's a right angle triangle, and we've got 6 meters here. We've got 7 meters there, and we're looking for the angle of elevation of the cat from the person, which is here. Looking at the triangles, it's going to be a tan, I believe. So it's going to be tan X. Now, stupidly, I've not labelled them, so let's label them. So opposite here and adjacent here. We don't need the hypotenuse, so we're going to do the opposite, which is 6 over the adjacent, which is 7. So we're looking for the inverse tan, so X equals the inverse tan of 6 over 7. When I do that on the calculator, I get 40.60 degrees to 2 decimal places. Well, I hope you found that video useful. Hopefully you understand the difference between Pythagoras and trigonometry. Hopefully you understand with Pythagoras, if you're finding the hypotenuse, you add them. If you're not finding the hypotenuse, you take them away. Hopefully you understand SOHCAHTOA and when to use which of these ratios, the sine ratio, the cosine ratio, and the tangent ratio. Whew. and hopefully you understand how to do the more complex types of questions as well. Thank you very much, and goodbye.